Many people today are doing the right things for their health. They are improving their nutrition, exercising, teaming with their practitioners, sometimes even doing therapy. Yet some still feel stuck physically, emotionally, or mentally. One question keeps coming up in wellness and healing alike, and that's why do some people remain stuck, even when they are doing many of the right things? On WellWave Now, we have been exploring that question from several angles over the past few weeks. We spoke with Dr. Bob Levine about behavioral patterns that can keep people locked in stress loops. We explored somatic work with Jenny Cohen and how experiences can become stored in the body. Together, those conversations are helping us explore a broader question, and that is again, why healing sometimes stalls. Today, we examine another perspective, and that's a framework that suggests unresolved emotional and energetic patterns may also influence whether healing moves forward or stalls. Our guest is Kristine Genovese. She spent more than decades as a corporate turnaround specialist before a major life disruption in 2020 led her to develop what she calls the soul intelligent method. She now works with practitioners in the integrative and functional medicine community, helping patients explore deeper emotional and energetic influences on health. So, Christine, let's start with a little clarification here, and that is
Okay,
what is the soul intelligence method and what problem is it designed to solve that other approaches may not fully address?
absolutely. And while the soul intelligence method is a bioenergetic method that gets to the underlying emotional root cause to all dis-ease or dissonance in the body or dysfunction in the body. And essentially what that is when emotion pools in the body, okay, that's when it causes the problems. That's when you get dis-ease or dysfunction or dissonance in the frequency, and you typically go to see a doctor. So everybody and everything is energy, right? I think we can all agree on that, right? Elementary school, that's what we learned. We're all protons, neutrons, electrons in this electromagnetic field. So we have an electromagnetic field around us. And that means things get drawn into our field, whether we intend it to or not. So sometimes what's wrong with us isn't even our own, it comes from other people. And I think we forget that we're energetic beings because we're physical, we're corporal. So we don't see ourselves vibrating, but that's exactly what's going on in the body. We are mostly water and electricity. So what the field of bioenergetics is was founded in the 90s by Dr. Alexander Lowen. And bioenergetics to me, coming from New York City, is common sense. If physically you're not feeling well, mentally and emotionally, you're probably not doing so hot either. And the correlation between those things. And so it's being able to get your body in coherence, your heart, your mind, and your physical well-being, all three of
Okay.
them.
Okay. So we're gonna dive into that, and we're gonna see how this New York City person got into this bioenergetic stuff, which, like you said, it just makes common sense at some points there. But
Mhm.
before we do so, I want to remind our listeners and our watchers that you are engaged now in WellWave Now, and that's where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path.
So, Christine, it's great to have you on the program. Enjoyed the backstory we did with you and getting to know you and your life a little better. And now we're ready to jump into what is this whole SQ. So let's talk about that real quick. When everybody knows about the IQ test that you would take and see what your how smart you are, and then I guess it's been about 10 or 15 years corporate America really adopted the EQ, emotional intelligence, and now we're learning about SQ. So before we define the method itself, it may help people understand through an example. So can you describe a situation where you've helped somebody become unstuck, maybe after they've already attempted many other approaches?
Absolutely. One person comes to mind, actually top of mind. Recently, I had a gentleman that I worked with who was in a recliner. You could tell his breathing was labored. He had a nasal cannula in when he came onto the Zoom. I could see his wife had found me. She had heard me on, another podcast, and they had tried naturopathic medicine. They had tried traditional medicine. He'd been in and out of VA hospitals for quite some time. And he had this tremendous pain in his thoracic area, kind of between the stomach and the chest, abdomen and the chest, kind of in that area. And the doctors were calling it a phantom pain. And he's like, I have very real pain. And you could see he was in a lot of pain. And so, he was a little skeptical, of course, but I'm sort of like the last stop on the magical mystery tour, as you say. We've tried everything else, so why not give it a whirl? And, he was like, well, how many sessions is it going to take? I said, well, I'll tell you what, let's just get in there. Let me just see what's going on and see what we can do. Because some people get relief after one session. If stuff has been in for a while, it may be layered. It might take a little while for it to really come out and to have some permanent relief. So we did a session. And during the session, I said to him, I said, wow, this happened, something, a tremendous, tragic trauma happened to you about 50 years ago. And I think it was 52 years to be exact. And I said, and it's not just yours, you're holding the energy for 80 other souls besides yourself. And he said, I was in Vietnam and that was the size of my company. And I was like, wow. And as I tell you, I got chills sharing that with you. So what I did is I moved that energy out, that had been stuck in that stomach. And if we think about the stomach area in particular, that's the solar plexus. Okay. So that's in, the 7 major energy centers in the body. Your stomach is the solar plexus chakra. That's where we have self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves, how we show up in the world. So it wasn't a big shock to me that that's where the pain was coming from. And so by the end of the session, I could see him, he had taken his oxygen out. I could see he had color back in his face and he was breathing more normally and he was sitting up. And I was just like, wow, so impressed after one session. Now we did work a few additional sessions together to really try and get him feeling much better. And then I partnered with a functional medicine doctor who's also a pharmacist, naturopathic doctor, who looked at all of his blood work, looked at all of the tests that he had done. And he also showed, so even though energetically I was able to remove the energy up and out, he also saw that there were things he could do in the body to help him heal, because now that we've gotten that energy out, now the body needs something to fully recover. And what he realized was serotonin levels in his body were so high. The reason is he was on an antidepressant. When you're on an antidepressant, traditional medicine usually gives you more if it's not working. So his body was producing too much serotonin, which was causing the pain. So too much serotonin, you would think that would be good. That's the happy hormone. Like he should have been giggling his butt off. That wasn't happening. So we gave him, or he prescribed something to him that had GABA in it, which counteracted the serotonin production. So cool. Fast forward a few months later, I see him pop onto my calendar and I was like, wonder what he's doing back here. So he gets on the Zoom. He's all happy. He looks so good. And I go, what are you doing back here? And he said, I'm feeling great. I go, that's fantastic. So why are you here? He said, I want to keep feeling great. And I was like, yes. So like you go to a chiropractor for a biomechanical adjustment, you come to me for a bioenergetic one. And his wife goes, but wait, let me tell you what he just did. I go, what did he do? He just got done blowing the entire driveway out with snow, like, snow blowing the driveway. And she's like, he's been stuck in a recliner. So she was so grateful she got her handyman husband back.
So now that's good. So now you spent some time over in Pennsylvania. You originally are you originally from Queens?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
how does this practical borough of New York, Queens, and now you talk about I'm holding the energy of 80 souls.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about what does that really mean? How would I hold the energy of 80 souls? And then let's start with that question. Because I know people, well, there's some people out there saying, yeah, this is beautiful. Others out there, my
Going,
fellow
what?
Nebraskans from my era are kind of saying,
Yeah,
oh,
those
oh,
Midwesterners right now are saying, come on, how did she know to ask about 80 souls?
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Well, the first thing is we didn't get into the method, but I use a book of charts and a pendulum so that I can get very specific information. So that's how I knew what it was and when it occurred. Right. But in terms of how does that happen?
Yeah.
So I started to talk about the solar plexus. That's how we feel our self-esteem, how we show up in the world. Right.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, when you walk into, like, you have to make a speech, sometimes you get butterflies in the stomach or something really bad happens. The first thing is you feel like you're punched in the gut, right? Like our stomach serves two purposes. It holds food and processes food. It's where we hold emotion and process emotion or don't. So he was feeling the weight of responsibility for his company way back when that he wasn't able to save people. He wasn't able to have the impact he was hoping to have. And so he held that physically in his body, right? Energetically in our souls, like that's where the energy settled. And that's why it was so intense. Somebody else, I'll give you a quick other example. So I had a woman who's a health coach. She called me and she said, Kristine, look, I haven't had a period in 3 months. I don't want my husband to touch me. And my business is starting to dry up. And I said, oh, well, we probably have to look at your sacral chakra. She's like, what? I go, yeah. So the sacral chakra is where our uterus is in a woman, where we birth babies and we birth businesses. It's also the seat of manhood, right? That's where our prostate is. So it's actually one of the reasons why so many men who retire get prostate cancer, because that's where the energy goes. They've lost their sense of purpose. So for her, I was like, all right, well, let me check your sacral chakra, because I think that's one of the reasons for the stagnancy, right? She's not getting a period, not feeling attractive, doesn't want to be with her husband, So I looked, it was 90% blocked. I'm like, well, of course it is. So I did the session. The very next morning, I got a text from her and she said to me, girl, you literally got everything flowing. I got my period. I let my husband hold me, and I had 3 new emails from clients in my inbox. I can't promise it works that quickly for everybody, but those are just 2 quick examples of where we hold energy,
Right.
and
So now
every dis-ease actually has an underlying emotional root cause.
I'm going to ask you a off path question here.
Okay.
This came to me, but it's another one. Breck doesn't like my. You can see Breck. Earlier we were calling him Cool Hand. Breck doesn't get thrown by anything. But he does get thrown by my off path
All
question.
right.
So, but maybe other people are like me. So, how do you see any conflict? Because you're also a faithful Catholic, if I recall correctly.
Mhm.
Do you see any conflict between this Indian chakra stuff and Christianity and what you've learned in the Christianity faith? Do you see that pulling you in different directions?
I don't actually, because when I choose to do this work, I sometimes call on what I would say are unseen beings, who might be Jesus Christ, might be Archangel Michael. And I am like the song, She Talks to Angels. I really do. So I ask for help from all kinds of beings and all kinds of places, because I know everybody and everything is energy. So
Well, now
even
you
though we
got me
can't,
scared. Now you got me scared there, Christine. There are indeed all kinds. Well, I'm with you on the spiritual plane, but there are indeed all kinds of spirits out there.
there
And
are lower
now
force energies we don't want to interact with.
There
Yes, I would
must
agree
be
with you.
opposition in all things.
Yes, yes. And so making sure that when I work with someone, I set up what I call a sacred space, right? So that I am not going to interfere with lower force energies, and I'm able to send those also back to be transmuted, right? Everything is energy. Like the only way we're seeing each other right now is energy and frequency, right? That's the only way that this application works. People take it for granted, right? Even hearing music, it's energy and frequency, and our brain interprets it. We are all energy and frequency. And so to me, it's science. It's bioenergetics, it's quantum physics, it's explainable. It's not my faith, right? So to me, it's kind of that's the difference.
And Christine, for our skeptical listeners, they may have felt the same about emotional intelligence. Oh, you're just going to talk about warm and fuzzy things, but now it's commonplace in the work environment today as well. So walk our listeners through, Karina, what actually happens when someone works with you. What's going on, and what are you moving for them?
we kind of had you define the method up top, but now you're talking about, but then you also got the part that goes inside of it though, which is soul intelligence.
Hmm.
What does that mean in practical terms? I think that lead right into then how do you execute on it? So
Absolutely.
is what
Yeah.
you were describing the knowledge that happens here, is that soul intelligence, or what is soul intelligence?
So to me, soul intelligence is that inner knowing, right? That eternal part of you. That is the soul component. So it's more than intuition, right? It is more than the spirit. It is your divine intelligence, your soul intelligence, your inner knowing. And it's getting quiet enough to be able to hear those messages. And so when I set up a sacred space, as Breck was kind of leaning into, what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that I'm present, the person in front of me is fully present, And that once I shift the energy, because once energy is created, it can't be destroyed. It has to be transmuted into something else. It's a scientific law. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling that energy out of that person, whether it's in their physical, mental, or emotional body, and I'm asking it to be sent back to the divine for transmutation into love or light. Now you can use whatever word you like, source, divine, God, other, whatever is comfortable with you. But for me, I talk about the higher power as the divine of all that is. So that's what I'm doing is I'm actually seeing where is it stuck, what is underneath it and what's causing it. Now, it can be something really simple. You might wake up with a pain in your neck, on the left side of your neck. And I would say, okay, well, the left side of your body is female, the right side is male. Necks represent flexibility. So are you being inflexible with your partner, or is she being inflexible with you? Right? Or is she literally being a pain in your neck? Like it could be something that little, even a sinus infection. Okay. That is typically an indication that you are really irritated with someone that's super close to you. So that could be a business partner, that could be your spouse. So there's certain things and clues that give me an understanding of what may be going on. If it's manifested in the physical, it's been there for a little while. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift it, whether it's in the physical, mental, or emotional body. So the way I do that is I use a book of charts and a pendulum, and I'm able to figure out specifically what's going on. People, places, timelines, like I mentioned, in the first example. It may also be something that's work related. So I have a career and work chart. We have repetitive patterns that come up in our lives, sometimes called archetypes, or roles that we play that may need to shift. Self-limiting beliefs, those thoughts that become beliefs that cloud the way we see the world. Things like I'm not good enough, or I'm not wanted, or I am alone. And you look for evidence in that in your life. Those are a little stickier.
Corrupt
Yeah.
future vision, as
Yeah.
Dr. Bob would
Yeah.
say. And Dr. Bob's not here today, but this is the part of the episode where Tim would interject that Dr. Bob is the pain in Tim's neck, but he's not here to
But it's a
defend
pain on the
himself.
right side. It's a pain on the right side then.
Yeah, then we got to get back to Brooks' question. You may have answered that question, but now come on, Christine. I just you're hitting all my deep rooted Midwestern sensibilities today.
I love it.
I don't know what you said, which side of my body was female, which side of my body was male. Well, how do I have female in the what do you mean by I've got female side of the body and a male side of the male side of the
L,
So
L
the
for
left,
lady. L for lady. Left,
yeah.
left side,
Well,
lady.
we are all divine masculine and feminine. We are a combination of energy. We're not one or the other. Now we certainly express typically more predominantly, in male or female, right? But the left side of the body is also about receiving. The right side of the body is about giving. And so that's another indication to me, right? Are you giving too much? Is too much going out of your body on the right side and you're not open to receiving enough? When I work with women who are working on fertility related issues, right? One of the things in order for them to be able to conceive is they have to be open to receive. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're so tense and so uptight, they're constricting the energy so their body isn't in a relaxed state to be able to receive from the male. So it's those kinds of things. So that's what I mean by sometimes the left side of the body will give me an indication that it's either receiving or female, or the right side of the body is giving or male.
Okay. Well,
Does that help you a little bit better?
it,
Go ahead. Tell me about one of your pains, Tim. I want to know. Maybe I can deduce what's going on.
I'm remaining open here, Christine, and I'm trying to say, because for example, both when you say, in one aspect, I would say, no, my female part was taken out long ago, and it's not till I have my wife that I become complete again. So that's my female part. But then I did reflect a little bit. So I mean, I'm skeptical, but I try not to be so cynical that I won't remain open. I then do look and say, well, they're on the spectrum part of it. I'm not one that believes in the 53 and growing genders and all that. But
Understand?
and I don't mean to offend anybody, any listener out there. I just don't happen to believe in it. Maybe someday it'll be revealed to me. But that said, you male and females both have estrogen, for example, and one is
Mhm.
seen more as a female hormone and one's seen more as a male hormone. And it's just men need some estrogen in there, females need some testosterone. So I remain open that there are that. And I did kind of
There are
remember my
different
comment.
organs that have polarities, right? We're in this world of duality and polarity,
Yeah,
right?
okay, but you gotta let me finish or I'll lose my train of thought again because I don't have enough
Oh, I'm
estrogen
sorry.
in my brain now. Which I did remember earlier what I was thinking about, was there a conflict between Christianity and Catholicism, the denomination with there, specifically in the chakra. And I said, well, the chakras could indeed be identified. I do believe in energy flow internally from
Mhm.
my martial arts days. That could just be revealing how God designed the body to work. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the other areas or other methods of belief that people have out there. And so it could just be just truly what you said. This is how the body actually works.
Yeah, it's the 7 major energy centers in the body. That's how I look at it, right? And there are more, but those are the primary ones that I tend to work with. And organs, right, also hold energy.
Mhm.
And they're tied to different major energy center points in the body. Because if we're all energy and it's all these cells vibrating, everything is there and everything is susceptible to the energy, which is no longer in motion, which is emotion, which is why I say there's always an underlying emotional root cause to everything.
Right. So, Brett, did we answer your question, or do you want
Yeah,
to
I
repeat that question?
yes. Hopefully it's clear to our audience too. And it's, we try to stay pretty non-denominational and very open to all types of beliefs on our podcast series here. But I think everybody can agree that there's some energy out there. Some people may call it nature, some people may call it the universe, some people may call it God, whatever they're calling that. And your individual body is attached to that energy somehow. You've just
Yes.
put a label on it. You're calling it soul. So somebody, I think most people even believe that they have some kind of a soul, right? That is energy. And so you're just putting a title on the SQ, like we've talked about, just
Mhm.
like somebody did with the EQ earlier
Yes.
this centuries. Yeah. So I think that has answered my question, Tim. So what's up next?
If you now, and I can't remember if you talked about it today or in our past discussion, you've talked about this Dr. Alexander Lowen, right?
Mhm.
And we've been talking about frequency and bioenergetics and all this. Give some more on the bioenergetics. Put it in some more in context of this healing. You've talked about releasing this, releasing that. What happens in this bioenergetic?
What happens? Well, you wanna do it? You want me to set up a session for you?
I do, I'm
Experience
Brett.
it firsthand?
I'm
He,
Brett.
he wants me
Yeah.
to be the guinea pig.
All right. Well, in essence, what happens, right? The best thing to me, if I use doctor speak. Yeah. Yep.
As
Yep.
always, maybe I got what you did. It's not necessarily your step by step, although we should go. You talk a little about step by step the chart. It's more in the body or in the
Mhm.
soul. And I got a different name of this for your method for you after we finish here. Um, what actually happens in the body in this biogenic healing when you do something, when you release something?
So typically, somebody will feel more peaceful. They might feel lighter. Some people who are sensitive to energy might feel something moving. Right. They might feel something going on. Other people get tired. Everyone responds to this bioenergetic adjustment differently. Right. We're all different. So there are different outcomes. For the most part, I tell people it's kind of like an energetic massage. I want you to drink water. I want you to relax and just kind of allow the energy to settle. And then what I want you to do is to start noticing what's different, right? What doesn't trigger you anymore? Or how do you feel around this person? Or you're now in this situation. Are you still holding that belief that you once had? Or have we shifted it? And so it's kind of paying attention to those things in your life to see after the session what's going on, right? And how you feel differently. And depending on what comes up in a session, that's when I might, refer them to a colleague, right? I might say, hey, you've got something really serious going on in the physical. And once I am able to shift energetically what's going on, I think we might need to give the body something additional to heal because now we've pulled the energy out and now it needs a little bit more to recover. So that's really how I partner with functional and integrative medicine. But in terms of the session itself, the coolest thing to me is all you have to do is to show up to a Zoom. right? And be open to receive. And that's basically it. So when we talk doctor speak, that's being compliant. Like you just have to show up. And so it's got a very high compliance rate. You show up, we're going to do the work, and I get to do the work. So the cool thing is that you get to just relax and receive. And that's really the difference in my method, right? You don't have to actually go get a blood test done. You don't have to go do anything. You get to show up and be present and to listen, because we haven't really talked about how the method works specifically, but most of what's going on with us is in the subconscious, right? In the subconscious mind. And I'm sure your audience, having been on this program, knows that we operate daily mostly using 5% of our mind, right? The conscious mind. But 95% of the time, what's running the show is the subconscious mind, which is great. When you're sleeping, you still breathe, right? If it wasn't running the show, we'd be in big trouble.
Mhm.
But it's about how do we reprogram that 5% of the conscious mind with the subconscious mind. And so I'm usually also providing some additional tools for people to be able to shift what's going on subconsciously, because that's where all of our emotions are stored. That's where the thoughts are stored, the beliefs. And it's in that subconscious area. So you may not even realize, right? A lot of people will come to me and they're like, I went through therapy. I dealt with my divorce. I don't understand why it's showing up again. And I said, because you're still holding that trauma in the physical body, or you're holding it in your emotional body. Your brain, you think you've processed it, but that's where we do all that calculating, strategizing, figuring, And what's infinitely stronger, incidentally, according to the Heart Math Institute, is you've got a 6-foot wide energy field around your heart and only a 2-foot wide energy field around your brain. It is infinitely more powerful and strong in the heart, right? And that's because that's the emotions, right? That's where our emotional body begins, is in the heart space.
So, Kristine,
So it's
do you ever
powerful.
yeah, do you ever work with someone who just wants to hold on to that pain or that anguish? I mean, I meet people all the time that like to waller. Do you
Mm.
just say, "Okay, come back to me when you're ready to get rid of this?" I mean, what do you do with that person that just likes to be miserable?
Most people, when they come to me, are looking for a change. They're looking for a shift, a transformation, right? They're open to changing and shifting. Have I worked with people where it's taken a longer period of time to get them to shift because they had so much trauma going on and so many different layers in their lives? Yes. I had a nurse that I actually worked with who was out of work. She had shingles, debilitating shingles. We had to work over several months worth of time to get her finally to a place where she was ready to release all of what was holding her back. It wasn't just one thing, it was multiple things, from, a divorce and being chosen a divorce. It was also a difficult job. It was also layer upon layer of trauma from childhood and things. And so sometimes people are in such a dark hole, it takes a little longer to get them to a place where they can function. Now, I can say, after having worked with her for quite some time, the shingles subsided. She's, back to work. She's in a healthy new relationship. All kinds of things shifted and pivoted, but she had to be in a place where she was ready. And some people, it takes a little bit longer because all of our lives are different. And we've all lived through various levels of trauma, emotional challenges, right? And that's really what the charges are. It's this emotion that's stuck somewhere that's got to
So, so,
shift.
so when you're working with somebody and you see this shift, how do you distinguish between this being just a placebo shift, or a true physiological or psychological shift and release is going on, or does it matter? One aspect, placebos have been shown to be effective for 6 months or longer. It can lead to some true healing. So talk about that a little bit, Christine.
Sure. Well, how about I use myself as an example? I had been in corporate America, as we talked about in the top of the program, for most of my career. And I grew up at a time when the glass ceiling really existed. I probably still have bumps on the top of my head from hitting it so many times. And I grew up actually with an alcoholic parent, to where I um, always felt like I always had to exceed expectations. I couldn't just meet expectations. I had this I'm not good enough self-limiting belief for a long time. And boy, did that serve me well in corporate America. So I made sure that I carried more cases of beer up the stairs when I was in college than the rest of the bartenders did. And
Yeah.
I made sure in corporate America that I talked like a man. I was crass. I use my New York slang, we'll call it. I was up on sports statistics. I would make fun of people who were emotional at work. The old adage from Tom Hanks in the movie, there's no crying in baseball in a league of their own,
Mhm.
you know, all of those things. And to such a degree that I had gone for a normal OBGYN checkup. And the doctor called me and said, "Hey, you've had an abnormal pap smear. You need to come in. We're going to do an in-office procedure called a copal." And I was like, okay. So you go in and then they cut you and they send the samples out. And then she calls me and she says, "Hey, you've got too many cells with cancer cells on them. And we need to do a conical biopsy in the hospital where we're going to put you under and we're going to cut your cervix." And I'm like, "What?" So, at the time I was so disconnected from my body that I was like, I'm done having kids. That's fine. Just take my parts out. If I have to have a hysterectomy, who cares? And I sat with that for, a little bit and I went, that is really crazy. So I started calling all kinds of people. I talked to my doctors. I got a second opinion. I went and saw an energetic acupuncturist. I went and saw a healer. I went and talked to a psychic. I went to a massage therapist that did energy work. And the first woman I went to, I will never forget, she told me I needed to get in touch with my divine feminine. That's why this was happening. I went, "What?" Because at the time, that wasn't something you would say. I was like, "What does that mean? I got to grow my hair long, wear flowy dresses, dance? What do you mean, get in touch with my divine feminine?" And in essence, what I realized is I had been stuffing my femininity down to the seed of creation in a woman, which is your cervix, your womb. And that's where the energy went. And my body was screaming for me to accept being a woman. I saw being a woman as weak, that you cry and you can't do that. I didn't realize. So I started to do some research on incredibly powerful women, who, Margaret Thatcher or, incredible leaders like Sekhmet, back in Egypt. She had crazy lioness hair like me. So that's probably why I identified, or Isis or Joan of Arc, or all these women that were actually really strong, powerful leaders. And I started to recognize I had a really warped perception of, myself. So I started to do the work and I started to do the shifting and I went to these different practitioners and I started to use my own method on me. And I started to see my cells vibrating healthy. And I had one friend say to me, "By the time you go in for that biopsy, it's going to be gone." I go, "You think?" So I went in, I had the procedure done, and I'll never forget the look on my OBGYN's face when she said to me, "We must have cut it all out." I'm like, "Yeah, we must have." Because she said it was gone. So was it the physical? Did we cut it out? Was it the energetic? Was it the mental? And my answer to you is yes, it all works together. And that's really my view on healthcare in general. When we talk about traditional allopathic or modern medicine, all the way to naturopathic and energetic medicine, it all works together to help heal that person
Mhm.
holistically and completely.
So, Kristine, we're going to get into how you developed your whole method here in the next segment. But first, a word from our sponsor, Brain IQ Pain Eraser Roll On, used by our very own Tim Daniels. After years of knee damage, being a D1 athlete and also an avid exerciser, he gets relief with the Brain IQ Pain Eraser. It delivers instant targeted relief using advanced nanotechnology combined with powerful natural ingredients that absorb quickly right where you need them. No pills, no mess, just roll it on and get back to moving. It's ideal for your lower back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, joint discomfort, and everyday aches and pains. Makes a great option for active adults, busy professionals, or anyone just tired of pain slowing them down. It's compact, easy to use, and effective. Brain IQ Eraser works where and when you need it. Try it yourself today and see how fast it can target your pain and give you relief. Brain IQ Pain Eraser Roll On. We'll leave a link in the show notes. So, let's get back to this whole method because you've approached this from a really unusual, in my opinion, unusual approach to it because you spent decades diagnosing systems and problems that where companies, corporate America was stuck
Hmm.
before applying that same thought process to individuals' health, right?
Hmm.
Well, I want to get into that now and and let's hear more about that whole process. Tim, I think you
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So if you look at that, so that experience, what did it teach you about identifying? Because part of your whole thing here, you may use is how you identify things. So what did that particular experience teach you about identifying where systems are stuck?
Yeah, I mean, it really allowed me to figure out, where people, process, or technology needed to shift in order for the business to reach their objectives, right? And there was always an underlying emotional, energetic current as to what was going on. Sometimes you're looking at an individual, you got a great player, wrong role, or you got somebody that doesn't really have the will to do it, even though they might have the skill to do it. When I looked at it from really a macro perspective, I would actually use the method that not the full on method that I have today, but sort of a precursor to what it is today. I would have my book of charts and a pendulum, and I would sit in the hotel room and I would figure out what are the underlying energies holding this business back. Because Lord knows I could not walk into a boardroom with a book of charts and a pendulum and go, hey, here's what's up. But I would understand what that energy was. Was there an underlying belief that the team couldn't succeed? Was there an underlying belief that they didn't believe in what they were producing or making, or they weren't making a difference? And what were those things that needed to shift energetically so then I can arm the leadership with being able to shift it? How do we shift it now? So whether that's people, process, or technology, or something else.
So Christine, you mentioned this pendulum a couple times.
It's a way
Do
you
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 have to
hold
go to
it.
confession after doing the pendulum?
Honest to God. It is literally, it's just, it's about as long as a pen. It's not
Okay.
very big. And you just hold it in your hand and it moves energetically based on, I ask the divine to, come through me and allow the energy to flow through so that I know what information to share. And when I work with people, they're like, how did you know that? Because I can get very specific. And I said, well, it's not me. I'm being shown. This is divination. This is literally coming through me from a higher place. So that's how it happens,
Okay, I'm
you know?
I'm mainly open because the 11 apostles did cast lots to replace Judas, and so
You
maybe
never know.
yeah, that's right.
You never know. I got an interesting ancestry. But no, it's just a way to get information, and it allows me to be pretty specific about
Yeah.
what self-limiting belief you're holding, or when this trauma occurred. Who were the cast of characters, right? When we talk about levels of consciousness, the first level is life's happening to me, right? The he said, she said, the victim, villain, hero, kind of the story. Then we kind of graduate to the next level, which is life is happening for me. And you take a step back and go, life university, this is the lesson. What is this protagonist showing me about me? How can I improve? Why is this person in my life pointing this out to me? It's so I can shift. And you kind of gain a different perspective. Then the next level is life is happening through me. And that's when I feel the divine is coming through. So some people, when they're writing, it's divine inspiration, So whether someone's writing a Bible or someone's writing a story or someone's writing a book, it is divine information flowing through them. It's also the state that we get in when we're meditating sometimes or praying, right? You feel something kind of come through you. It's sort of that flow state when you're in a creative state and you lose a sense of time and you're like, gosh, where did it go? It can even happen when you're just having a lot of fun, right? You lose sense of time and space when you're in that state. Then the last state is what we call life is happening as me. And those are a few fleeting moments. Like maybe you're at the ocean and you just kind of feel yourself kind of become one with the waves, like almost that you become part of that ocean. Or you're at the top of a mountain and you just kind of dissolve and just only hear the wind rushing, nature. And those are fleeting moments because we are here on earth. And the second you pull it back out into traffic, you're going to be right down at the bottom of that scale going, oh, what did that guy cut me off? Right. And then you got to go, well, maybe it was so I didn't run into the back of this guy. Or maybe this accident occurred before I got there. So it wasn't me, and you start going back up the scale. So I try and live my life somewhere between life is happening for me and life is happening through me. And when I'm doing this work, it's definitely coming through me.
So when we look at, that corporate experience,
Mhm.
that's really where I see the crossover, right? From the emotional intelligence to soul intelligence was you were looking at teams to see why are they stuck? That's the, the corporate culture, right?
Absolutely.
And then applying your new method. So your pivot happened specifically for you, though, back in 2020. How did that period lead you to develop the method to begin with?
Wow. Yeah. March 12th of 2020 is a date forever burned in my brain. It is the day that I received a call from what was my last corporate turnaround for very different reasons. I got a call from the head of HR letting me know my services were no longer needed, which was extremely shocking to me because I had never been fired in my entire career. This was the first time in my early 50s. And that's because I always met or exceeded expectations. I told you I had that whole good self-limiting belief for a long time. And I had just gotten a performance bonus. So you want to talk about the shock of your life. I hit the objective. What do you mean my services are no longer needed? I go, what do you want to do? Go backwards? What? We're making the turn. This is year one of a planned 3-year turnaround. And so I texted my boss at the time, the COO, and I said, I just got fired. He goes, me too. I'm like, what the? Okay. And you can fill in the blank. And basically what had happened is we had been asking to hire people in the fourth quarter of the year so that we would be able to convert the marketing leads in the first quarter of the year. But the CEO kept saying, nope, you got to hold the line on expenses. We don't want you to hire anybody through the end of the year. Okay, well, we're not going to hit the number. So what he did is he fired me, he fired my boss, and then he walked into the boardroom with our board deck and said, we didn't hire enough people. And he went on a hiring spree. So he did, karma has a way of working things out, balancing the scales. The CEO was investigated by the board. He was removed from office, and then he put a crony in his place, and they summarily ran the company into the ground. It no longer exists today, which is a shame because I did believe that they were doing some good work for a while. However, what did that do for me? Well, that gave me what I'm calling my divine timeout, along with the rest of the world in the height of COVID, right? I went through all the stages of grief and freaking out and, all the things, right? Because this had never happened to me before. I couldn't just pick up the phone and start working my network to find another job because everybody was freaking out going, we have to figure out this work from home thing. No one's going out, no one's going anywhere. So I was lucky in that, because it was a wrongful termination, I was given a nice exit package. As a matter of fact, I had, by my calculations, about 9 months to figure out what I really want to do. And so I listened to a friend who said, you know what, instead of just jumping back into what you've always done, why don't you really explore what do you really want to do with your life? And so I did a lot of prayer and meditation. I remember this one really strong meditation where I had tears streaming down my face. And I just knew my soul intelligence was screaming at me that I couldn't go back into corporate America. And so I picked up that book and Pendulum, and I realized that the method that I had was really too restrictive. It didn't incorporate and encompass enough of what I felt I needed in terms of charts and support. It maybe had a dozen charts to it. And I've developed a system that has about 30 charts in it, plus, 100 different archetypes and masculine and feminine destructive qualities and energies and self-limiting beliefs and all kinds of things that weren't in sort of an incarnation, a precursor to soul intelligence. And it,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Christine, because there's a maybe a connection that I'm not getting. Not that you didn't necessarily miss it. I'm just not getting it. When and how did you decide that this soul intelligence that you were applying to systems and the organizations needed to be applied to people and could be applied to people?
well, that's the next step of the journey, right? So I got the system developed and I went, huh, this is really good. Now, how am I going to get it into people's hands? How am I going to translate it? So what I did is since I had earned a coaching credential years prior, I just used it in companies. I didn't actually coach. I decided, all right, I'm going to leverage my network. And what I did is I developed a leadership program designed to move middle managers to senior leadership, senior leaders into executive roles, and then also did some executive coaching. And I said, hey, you give me 90 days, give me 1 quarter, and I'm going to give you a team of leaders who are ready to run through the fire for you. They are going to be lit up from the inside out. Okay. They are going to be in alignment with your mission, your vision, your values, and your purpose. And who doesn't want that? So I got a few CEOs to nod their heads because it sounded really good to them. And they thought, okay, why not? I'll give you 12 weeks, let's say. And what I did is I designed this group coaching program for these companies, and I would do 3 one-on-ones in the program. The first one, I used a really cool tool that I still use today called the Game Changing Index, which was developed by researchers in the UK because they were looking for game changers, people who had that out of the box thinking, that wild idea. They knew there had to be a way to find them, but how do they find them? So this quick survey, it's really fun. You guys should take it. I'll send it to you. But what it does is it shows you where your energy naturally wants to go, where it naturally wants to flow. So I would do that in the beginning. So I would have a better sense of the leader in front of me. Then we'd do a midpoint check-in where I would talk to them with a traditional coaching session. How are the methods that I'm sharing with you working? How's it showing up in your team's performance? Where are some of your challenges? Blah, blah, blah. And then by nearly the end of the program, a few weeks before it would end, I would have a third one-on-one. And that one-on-one, I gave everybody an opportunity to choose. And I said, listen, you've gotten to know me pretty well by now. We can do a traditional coaching session, talk about all the things that I've shared with you and techniques and strategies to amp your team up and yourself. And we could do that. Or you could take a risk walk with me and we can get to the underlying root cause of every reason why your team's in this position in the first place, why you feel the way you do, and why things are showing up in your personal life in a way in which you don't want them to. But you've got to do a soul intelligence session with me. Every single person chose the soul intelligence session. So I knew it at that moment, it was game on. And so that's where I really had my proof cases on how to use the method in a coaching environment. So then I started thinking, I have this really cool functional medicine doctor. She's a triple board certified MD. She's actually the person who wrote the foreword to my book. And I sent her an email and I said, hey, I know you know me as this crazy adrenal junkie, plane hopping corporate lunatic. But I have another side to me, and I know I have this gift to shift energy, and I really think I can help people. And I would love to share it with you. And she said, well, look, I'm pretty booked, but if you want to come down, I said, that's fine. I'll clear my afternoon. She didn't know I wasn't working. So I was like, okay, I'm creating urgency right here. So I went down and I sat in her office. And when I got there, one of her colleagues, she has several different doctors that work with her, had 3 clients cancel at the last minute. She goes, this never happens. And I went, oh boy, the divine's teeing it up for me. So I started to work with her and she had such an emotional release. She was crying. She kicked water all over the floor. Water typically represents emotion. And that moment, my doctor friend knocked on the door to see how it was going. And she goes, oh my gosh, I'm next. And it was game on. And so that was really my entree into functional medicine. I started working for her colleagues, her staff, and then started with patients. And then word spread, and I started to work with other functional medicine doctors. In addition, one of my executive coaching clients happened to be the CEO of Nutritional Frontiers, which is a nutraceutical company that works with all kinds of functional and integrative medicine doctors. And so he started to flip the script on me, used my own coaching methods on me and said, you're going to work for me full time someday. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And here I am almost 5 years later, having the opportunity of a lifetime to combine helping people heal in the physical, mental, and emotional realm. So it's been a really perfect marriage.
Now, you mentioned the one functional practice, but you work with other MDs and you work with DOs and functional medicine. How does that partnership work today?
It's great. So typically what they do is they'll refer clients to me, especially the more challenging ones, right? Functional medicine typically operates a little bit differently. A lot of modern medicine doctors, they're like, I got to see a patient every 15 minutes and you don't get much time. In functional medicine, they really do deep dives with people, and most of them are going to spend anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes with you to make sure that they're really doing a deep dive on your history and making sure that they're treating the whole person. And so when they get someone that's got a lot of trauma, a lot of emotional challenges, going through a major life change, that's typically when they're going to ask me to step in and to help shift some of the energy so that whatever they're prescribing to them, the body is ready to accept and take hold, right? Because if someone's going through massive depression, they're not going to heal as quickly as someone who's shifted and open and ready to receive the healing and have the body respond as well. So it really works hand in hand.
So now, are some of the practitioners picking up your method themselves and implementing it?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that. Yes, that's the coolest thing because that's my mission in the world. I want to see this method in wellness centers across the country. I want to teach more people how to become a neuroenergetic healthcare professional because that's what I do. It's neuro, it's the nervous system, it's the energy coming into the body and shifting those things so that someone can actually heal completely. And I have an online course that people can take. I've trained nurses, I've trained doctors, I've trained psychologists, I've trained people that are just interested in healing and wanting to make a difference. So it's really kind of cool to do that. I also have a mini course where I teach a live workshop about 8 hours over 2 days for people who just want to learn to do it for themselves. So it's only using about half the charts, and it's really just to be able to take care of you, maybe clearing a space or,
So
a
when
little
when are you
heavy
gonna get
tool.
that credentialed so providers can get CE credits by going through your course?
Well, what's interesting is I did work in the field of higher education for most of my corporate career. And I helped a lot of universities put their courses up online. And so I do understand the credentialing process. And we're working on doing some of those courses actually through what we're going to call NFU EDU, which is Nutritional Frontiers University. So we are looking to be able to certify people in that. I personally do certify people presently. That's I have to make sure people know what they're doing.
So as you look at this, so now you've applied this in a lot of situations, a lot of areas. With two questions. So a lot of times when people are coming to whether or not it's for this release to advance in companies or whether or not it's to be healing, they've tried a number of different other things. You say most times now people come here ready for a shift, but what are the patterns that you've seen in those people? What's been limiting them in the past?
Well, that's a really great question. I mean, to try and sum it all up and to put everybody together in one spot. I wrote an article actually for Best Holistic Life magazine not too long ago where I really talked specifically about the childhood patterns, the childhood wounds running your life and how to clear them energetically. So, I'm going to give you 7, okay? You want 7? I'll
I'll
give you
take them.
7. All right. The first one is abandonment. So if we take a quick inventory, these childhood wounds, right? Safety felt inconsistent, love felt uncertain, maybe loss felt familiar. And as a child, you might have learned that people leave either emotionally or physically. So as an adult, you cling, you might overgive, you detach, or you leave first. So your nervous system learned that closeness wasn't safe. All right. Number 2, emotional neglect. Your inner world went unseen. You learned to self soothe too early. Your needs felt inconvenient. So, as an adult, you struggle to ask for help. You might even feel lonely, even when you're in connection with another person. And your system learned that your needs weren't safe to express. All right, number 3, conditional love. You get love when you behave. Approval had to be earned. You became afraid to fail. Mistakes were unsafe. So, as an adult, you people please, you overwork, you fear disappointing other people. Love felt like something that you must deserve. All right, chaos or instability, number 4. Your home was emotionally unpredictable. Calm felt unfamiliar. Constant alert became the norm. So, as an adult, you might confuse intensity with connection and peace with boredom. So, your body learned that chaos was normal. All right, 5. Criticism or shame. Mistakes felt dangerous. Encouragement was rare. Support was limited. As an adult, you chase perfection and live with an inner critic. That voice isn't motivation, it's memory. The next one, number 6, this is a big one. Emotional enmeshment. Big word. You carried adult emotions. You became the fixer. Your needs came last. So, as an adult, you attract emotionally unavailable people and you might struggle with boundaries. Love meant losing yourself or abandoning yourself. Number 7, lack of safety. Protection was missing, hypervigilance became normal, and rest felt risky. As an adult, you might struggle to relax, trust, or soften. So, your nervous system never learned safety. So, the point of all of those 7 is you're not broken, you're just conditioned.
Is it common for people to have multiple or fit into multiple
Of course, yes.
categories?
I was a perfect 7. I was a perfect 7. But
Wow.
there were right, things that were more prominent than others, right? But that's what we learned, right? And that's what our nervous system felt was normal. And so then we create additional life circumstances that reflect these things. So I mentioned earlier, growing up with an alcoholic parent, I had this sense of whatever I did was never good enough. So I became the overachiever. Well, that was fantastic in work, but that was terrible in my personal relationships. What that did was I would overdo, allowing my partner to underdo. And then I was annoyed, like, I'm not even on the list. I didn't make the to-do list. My needs aren't important. Well, I was choosing a partner that was reflecting exactly back to me what I was putting out energetically. So, and that took a long time to learn, guys. Can I tell you that?
So,
Thank God I finally kicked that self-abandonment bucket over,
so
you know.
glad you got through that, and thanks for the 7 items there. In this, have you seen times when this doesn't work and any patterns with that?
When my method doesn't work? Nope, because it's science, it's energy, and something shifted. Now,
Now, Kristine,
some people have greater shifts than others,
now,
okay?
Kristine, even I don't know if it was all the 12 apostles at the time, but it was certainly a number of them. They couldn't heal the boy. Some people think he had epilepsy,
Mhm.
and they even turned to Christ and said, why couldn't we heal this boy? Why didn't it work? And they had to be given an explanation of why it didn't, and why it took Christ himself to do that one.
Well, I think it comes to life is happening for me, right? So are there things that we can't shift? So to answer your question more directly,
Mhm.
there's a chart that I have that talks about psychological disorders. And I have to ask, is this, and so I don't say it wrong, I know what chart it is, so I'm just going to look it up since I have it handy here. Is it mental, is it behavioral, or is it neurological? Because sometimes if it's mental or behavioral, I can shift it. If it's neurological, it's in there for a greater purpose. And so I can't shift that out. And the greater purpose is a lesson. That person may be having this experience in this human existence to help teach others through their own experience and learning, right? Which is what I really feel we're all here to do. So, to answer your question more specifically, yes, I would think there would be some things that I am not able to shift. And that's why I was saying to you, have I ever had anybody who didn't have a shift? No. Anybody that I have worked with has had a shift. But again, I told you that they have to be open and willing to receive in the first place. Now, if people are curious, once a month, I do a group session. Okay, where people can go to my website if they're interested to sign up for that, to put their toe in the water. And when I do a group session, what I'm looking for, I do it around a theme. So, for example, in February, I did it based on relationships, not only the relationship with the other, but the relationship with self, because we think about Valentine's Day and love and all of that. So, I was really shifting a lot of those types of energies. And so each month I pick a different theme based on, what's going on, like energetically or collectively, or what I'm seeing in clients that I'm working with, or kind of what I think is kind of relevant for the season or the time.
And give
And
give
so
our
that's a
listeners
great
that
way for someone to shift that.
yeah, give our listeners that website so they know how to reach you.
Sure. It's soul, SOUL, intelligencemethod.com. So soulintelligencemethod.com is how to find me. That's why I talk about soul intelligence so much.
Well, thank you, Kristine. This has really been helpful to better understand, why this conversation even matters and why different approaches may address different parts of the same challenge. So really appreciate you being our guest today. Any final questions or comments
Nope,
from you,
good.
Jim?
I'm
Okay.
good.
Well, today we explored the Soul Intelligence Method, SQ, with curiosity and discernment. Now, this conversation, if you want to continue this, please go to the WellWaveNOW, where we can explore more of these systems that we're talking about. Of course, previously we talked about behavioral patterns with Dr. Bob Levine. We talked about the semantic patterns with Jenny Cohen, and now we have the SQ. So please follow up with us. And we've explored this as being a part of your healing journey. And if you want more on this topic and other topics, please check out the companion discussions on the Wellness Wave Club YouTube channel. And until next time, everyone, stay empowered, stay curious, and remember, wellness, it's in you.